All right, baby.
We're back.
We're back. Mainstream media's dead.
It's been dead.
Hey, I think this was the final nail in the coffin. The final bullet. They're dead.
So do you mean by mainstream media? The
God
old news channels?
Yes, God damn it. I keep telling myself that I'm going to stop referring to CNN and MSNBC as mainstream media and start referring to them as legacy media. But
They're old media.
old habits die hard, man.
They're the old boys.
Yep, they are no longer the mainstream media. I mean, they told us for months and months and months that Trump's Hitler, Joe Biden sharp as a tack, Kamala Harris embodies joy, and it didn't make a damn of a difference. They have lost all their power.
Yeah, I feel like really post-COVID when all this stuff came out about how the stuff they were saying just wasn't true, as if people hadn't already lost faith in them. That was like kind of the final kick in the nuts for a lot of people. Like, yeah, these guys really don't give a shit about us.
No, they don't. And actually, not only do they not give a shit about us, they despise us.
Yeah.
Those are a bunch of New York liberals that despise the country folk.
And I feel like they're just like, if we say it, people will believe it. And there's not really a lot of respect for your own personal intelligence to be able to figure out what's actually correct or not.
Some of the stats that I'm looking at here, the weekend after the election, MSNBC, and granted they're weekend shows, so they don't get a ton of viewers anyways, but in the key demographic, 20,000 viewers for MSNBC.
Ouch.
20,000 viewers.
In a couple weeks, this podcast might have 20,000 views.
I mean, dude, we're right there behind MSNBC. We're not that far off.
We're right on the heels.
We're not that far off.
We're closer to MSNBC than MSNBC is to Joe Rogan.
By like 10,000 times. Yeah, for sure. I think the final numbers for the Joe Rogan Trump podcast came in at 100 million plus after being censored by YouTube.
Yeah. Not surprising.
I mean, they're dead, man. And
I feel like if there was an actually unbiased news network that just kind of gave you some facts, and that's what it was, that would have the potential to do pretty well. But, are we going to get that? No.
It would only do well if it was an internet show, though. I don't think anybody has cable anymore. Like that, I think that's part of the problem is that nobody under the age of 70 even has the ability to like grab their TV remote and just flip on CNN.
Right.
I mean, you got to watch on Hulu
it's on
or
your
something.
like local news channel,
I mean, yeah, I don't even have cable. Like, I just have Hulu.
Yeah.
And
you
can find it on Hulu.
I have Hulu, and it's like, after the football game, 60 Minutes comes on or, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can find CNN on Hulu, but it's just not like why. If you already have a smart TV, why would you ever watch cable news? Like that kind of defeats the whole purpose. I totally
understand where you're coming from.
And then, the other part of this equation that not only did the free media she got on cable news not matter at all. And it was something, I think the spread was like, it's 90% positive on cable news for Kamala Harris, and it was almost 100% negative on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But Kamala Harris in 3 months spent $1 billion. I saw it was like
1.2 or something.
Yeah. It's over $1 billion for her versus Trump's 500 million.
Yeah.
I was getting my stats a little turned around there.
Well, when you pay all these rappers to come, rap for you, and then they, talk for 5 minutes, and if you're basing your vote off of what Cardi B says, man, I don't think you're gonna vote Republican anyways.
No. If you're basing your vote off what Cardi B has to say, your IQ is sub 80.
Yeah,
man. You're not doing great.
I like that Kamala brought in like these kind of rap artists, and not like someone that would actually inspire, swing state voters or, I'll say legitimate voters.
Yeah. No. And I think that just came out. They paid Oprah Winfrey, they being the Kamala Harris campaign, over $1 million. Like, what a
I thought it was like 10 million.
It was 1 million for this rally that she showed up at. Maybe she went into
I thought,
got paid more than that.
I thought Kamala paid one of them like $10 million or something for like 10 minutes.
Wow. I mean, but what a disgusting dynamic that you are going to go to average people and say, please donate $10, donate $25, whatever you can afford to people that are struggling, to give it to Oprah Winfrey.
Right.
What kind of bullshit is that?
And I feel the same way about Trump asking for money via Twitter. I mean, and they did say only give what you're able to. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I'm like, hey, fuck you guys.
But at least Trump didn't
ask me for money.
At least he didn't give the money to Elon Musk.
I get what you're saying.
At least he spent it on the campaign.
But still, I'm just like, fundraise your own money, motherfucker.
I'm curious to hear more in the next few months about how much of a ground game Trump did. Because what I heard is that he didn't do much of anything. Like hardly no door knocking. Yeah. Not a whole lot of paid ads. I mean, it was all just him taking up space in social media and unearned advertising.
Right. And I mean, the paid ads thing, I feel like is just a, what do you call it? A function of less people watching, media.
Yeah.
Or old media.
Yeah. And
the old boys.
And, Kamala Harris did a lot of campaigning or a lot of advertising on like college football, NFL football games. And it just made no difference, man. It didn't matter at all.
I don't know. For me, the political ads when I'm trying to watch football, they just piss me off more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's a Trump or a Kamala ad, like, get these motherfuckers off my TV. I'm trying to watch football.
Now, imagine if you lived in a state where they actually campaigned.
I know. It'd be nuts. I'd hate myself.
Oh, man. It's really bad, though. It's really bad that she takes money from these, normal people, gives it to celebrities, spends it all on, ad placements on CNN. Then CNN gives her favorable coverage. Like, what a racket this is, man. Like, you're taking from normal people and then just giving the money to these, like, rich, network executives. And granted, CNN's going to be bankrupt soon. So that's a good thing. That this won't continue forever. But man, you just don't see that in the podcast networks. They're not taking money from these like normal average people and then just blowing it all on ads on Joe Rogan. I mean,
although
that's a crock.
I will say Kamala wasting average day people's money. I mean, what's the big difference from the last 4 fucking years? I mean, what do you people think she's gonna spend your money wisely?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. If you're mad that you gave money to Kamala Harris and she spent it like a dumbass, then
that should almost have been an expectation.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I think Trump he's a more kind of polarizing figure and definitely more aggressive towards like, I should go on this podcast, and whether it was Trump's own initiative, or as the people say, it was Barron pushing him to do it because Barron, young guy, knows what the kids want. Mm-hmm. I think it was kind of a genius move, and like I listened to multiple podcasts that Trump's on, and I didn't listen to him because Trump went on the podcast. I listened to him because they're just podcasts I listen to, mm-hmm. and I was pretty much just going to listen to him regardless of whether he was on or not. Mm-hmm. So I think that was kind of, as far as getting yourself out there and getting a lot of exposure to, for people to hear your ideas, that was key.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people like you out there that just listen to the podcast. Trump happens to be on it, great. But there are a lot of people that tuned into just to listen to Trump. Like Joe Rogan doesn't average 100 million views, But then you take the reverse of that. You look at Kamala Harris and...
You know what I will say, though? You know who was podcasting before Trump?
Who?
RFK. My boy. He knew.
Hey.
Maybe RFK gave Trump the little push.
We should come back to that because he really parlayed his third-party candidacy into something really decent, and we should come back to that, man, because that's probably worth an episode by itself. That maybe that's something we tackle once we can look at how he's done as the Secretary of Human Health Services.
I feel like it'll be interesting to see what changes he makes. Mm-hmm. For me, that it's super intriguing in the sense of, you know, if you look at pictures of just the average people walking down the street in like the 60s, it's like, compared to today, it's like, wow, those people look good. We look fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether that's a function of, I don't know, quality of life or food or whatever, you probably really get into it. But
Yeah. But, you know, with Kamala Harris going on the Call Her Daddy podcast, 700,000 viewers is what they're saying it did. I don't know where her average viewership is, but it's got to be better than that. I mean, people had to have turned it off when they saw Kamala Harris on there.
I have zero knowledge about the Call Her Daddy podcast. But from my very brief understanding is it's like kind of aiming toward, they are like kind of like a sexual women-based podcast. And, you know, I don't know, maybe not the podcast you want. If your presidential candidate's going to do one, going on the sex podcast might not be the one to go on. I don't know.
And can we just take a second to, I don't know if we've even discussed this in prior episodes, but can we just talk about for a second the absolute idiocy of the question, Madam Vice President, can you think of a single law that controls the bodies of men like pro-life laws do to women? Yeah, yes, bitch, selective service. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, they got lit up on that one.
Dude.
They got lit up on that one.
And she just said, she's like, no, I can't think of a single one. Like,
Yeah.
not one. How about every fucking one? Like,
I
what?
feel like not only that, but, you know, that just kind of turns us to another point. Like, I feel like the Democratic Party tried to make a very strong point that Trump was, you know, anti-abortion or national abortion ban or whatever. And, you know, however you feel about it, I mean, Trump was publicly saying, I'm not going to do a national abortion ban.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you have this video evidence of this guy saying he's not going to do this, and the other side's totally committed to the fact that he is. And, you know, to me, that's just like, you're losing credibility that way.
Yeah. No, it was a great political move by Donald Trump, and people like to make Donald Trump out to be just a babbling idiot all the time, and he's not like that all the time. It was a total art of war move. He saw that the abortion issue is a loser for Republicans, and so he said, fine, I'm just not going to fight that battle.
Right.
You win.
Right.
Sure. No, national abortion ban? Nope, not going to do it.
Because he just wants to put, like, more power in the states' hands or something. And
he's like, let the states decide. If the people vote that they want, you know, pro-choice laws, we'll respect that. If they want pro-life laws, I'll respect that. That's a good policy for Republicans to have anyways. That's federalism.
Well, I was going to say that's just
a good thing
more of
for
a
us.
Republican, not benefit, but it's Republican background thing. You know?
Yeah, no, that's totally one of the underlying theories of you know, Republican political theory and how Republicans should govern. And you know, Donald Trump, funny enough, he's not a big subscriber to federalism anyways.
Right,
you know, that you can point to 100 different examples where that's, you know, not his primary belief. But in this particular issue, that was a clear loser for Republicans. 2022, they got hammered on it. He came out and just took it right off the table. He said, I'm not going to sign a national abortion ban. We're not going to talk about this anymore. And it showed at the polls. He did a really good job just taking that issue right off the top.
Right,
so
right.
We're not going to talk about it. So really political savvy move by Donald Trump there.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to win, I feel like that's kind of a sacrifice, or maybe not sacrifice, but, you know, like you're saying, a smart move.
For sure. And, you know, and back to Kamala Harris, it wasn't just Call Her Daddy that she went on and bombed. She went on Shannon Sharp's podcast, which
Oh, yeah, I do. I kind of vaguely remember that.
With Cat Williams, that podcast did 70 million views. With her, they barely broke 1 million.
Oh, really?
I love Cat Williams. I'm not trying to denigrate Cat Williams here, but come on. Like really?
Yeah,
like, you can't do better than Cat?
I totally forgot Kamala went on Shannon Sharp's podcast.
And he was a softball, man.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And now that you say that, I feel like I remember seeing a clip or two from it, or like I saw the headlines for it or something. But
he came out right off the top of the interview and said he wanted her to win. Which,
Yeah.
You know, I like the transparency,
Right.
but you know, it was nice for at least a lot of these podcasts Donald Trump went on, and I don't know, you might have listened to more of them than I did, but nobody came right out in front and was just like, I hope you win, Donald
Right,
Trump.
right,
Like Theo
right.
Vaughn didn't do that. Aiden Ross didn't do that. Joe Rogan definitely didn't do that.
No, I feel like at least a couple podcasts I listen to, I'm not saying on Busting with the Boys they were hitting them with the big questions or anything, but they're definitely more like kind of like what Joe Rogan's motto is, like, I just want to sit down and have a conversation with you. Like they're just talking, and yeah, politics came into it, but they're talking a lot about non-politics related stuff too. You know, like my Busting with the Boys podcast, they talk a lot of football, and I feel like you learn a lot about people when they're. You know, it's one thing when you're talking to a politician about politics and they have all this scripted stuff in their head. And it's another thing to kind of get them to start talking about stuff that, maybe isn't so partisan, and you kind of see who they are, you know.
Yeah, and Crystal from Breaking Points kind of brought this up, that there is a drawback to people switching over to the podcast realm and leaving the cable networks behind, and that's that these confrontational interviews are probably going to go to the wayside, where you're going to see a lot more of these just sit down conversation style interviews instead of like what you saw with Brett Baer and Kamala Harris. But on the flip side, we don't really learn anything from those anyways. They just interrupt each other and they ask gotcha questions. They're usually gotcha questions about shit no one cares about.
Right.
Like, look at the ABC debate moderators. They spend half their time on goddamn climate change and shit. Like, no one gives a shit about climate change. People can't afford groceries.
Yeah.
Like, shut the fuck up.
I feel like the confrontational thing is good for the clickbait, good for the views. But, you know, whenever I watched the presidential debate or any of them in the last, couple election cycles, I could hardly just bear watching it, and it's just so...
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of little kids fighting,
The Republicans should never agree to another debate moderated by the legacy media.
Well, if they do a debate, well, yeah, I'm moderated by the legacy media. I do agree. I feel like... the Democratic Party would probably call Joe Rogan an extreme Republican now, but, I feel like someone like him, whether it's him or someone else, would be kind of the perfect moderator, very even-keeled, going to ask honest questions. My other favorite fan theory of what they should do for presidential elections is, like, make the candidates wear, like, a big old fucking shock collar. And you get your 60 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever. And when your time's up and you keep speaking, zap, shut the fuck up.
You could even go, though, like Chris Wallace just left whatever shitty outlet he was in. And he's going to go into the podcast world. Get him to do it. He's good enough. He's worked for Fox. He's worked, it was like CNN or NBC or something.
Yeah, it's not like you couldn't find a fairly middle of the road guy.
I'm even fine with let Chris Cuomo do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gotten better since he's left CNN. He still did some terrible things, but he's left CNN. He's not on the payroll.
Let that guy get lit up.
Yeah, I mean,
they're gonna flip the script and start roasting his ass.
Fair enough, but as long as you're not on the payroll of these stupid ass executives running, they've already run CNN into the ground. They've already run NBC into the ground.
I think that's
why
one thing
give them any power?
That's refreshing about Trump is, well, I'm sure he has his own kind of personal agenda, that shit he wants to do and reasons for it and whatnot, whether we agree with it or not. Kamala, there's no way you can tell me that there's more outside influences on Kamala than there is Trump. I feel like Trump's kind of one of those guys, at least, he's going to be honest about what he wants to do and why he's going to do it. With Kamala, I feel like there's just like, the people hidden behind the mask told me I'm going to run for president, so I'm going to shut the fuck up and do whatever they say.
Yeah.
Because then I get to be the first African American woman president.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I feel like she was more like, kind of, people saw through the puppeteering act, and the legacy media almost made it, even more apparent.
Yep. Yeah, no, they tried to cover for her too hard. She was so bad that them covering for her destroyed the very last little bit of credibility they had.
Yeah.
And they lost almost all of it covering for Joe Biden.
Right.
And she was just as bad, but in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, just as bad, but at least with, I don't know, I mean, the Joe of today is, quite a bit different from the Joe of 4 years ago, but I feel like the Joe, at least of 4 years ago, while he may have had some brain fucking timeouts and whatnot, could kind of like bullshit his way through a conversation, where Kamala is just like, she's just on an island struggling.
Did you see Joe Rogan walk in, or Joe Rogan? Did you see Joe Biden walk into the rainforest after his speech?
Yeah,
his
I did see that. So what was it like? Joe Biden he was able to authorize Ukraine's use of U.S. long-range missiles, but while he was in the rainforest.
Yeah, okay. So I have a hot take here, and I somewhat got vindicated today. So, but I've had this take for a couple days. I've been on the record for it. Donald Trump definitely asked Joe Biden to authorize the long-range missile strikes and the anti-personnel mines to be used.
Wow.
Here's why.
Wow.
Joe Biden's going out. Russia is not going to escalate knowing that there will be a change in president in the next couple months,
right,
and that the next president's going to want to negotiate. Donald Trump just is racking up bargaining chips because what he can do is if he comes in and Putin doesn't want to negotiate or play ball, he can say, fine, I'm not going to escalate. I'm just going to let our current policies stand.
Right,
and the current policies are much more aggressive,
right,
these strikes into Russia and everything. So, and Donald Trump came out today and in support of the long-range missile strikes into Russia. And that's because I'm sure Joe Biden was taking so much flack for it that Trump just had to come out and be like, all right, guys, calm. This was my idea. That's total art of the deal, though, right? You got to ramp up pressure.
Put the front man out.
Yeah, you have this sacrificial lamb. It's good cop, bad cop. He's going to go in there. He's going to stir shit up. He's going to put the worst deal out there. And then the good cop gets to come in. We'll stop doing that. We'll stop these long-range missile strikes, but you got to play ball.
What did crack me up was Rogan and Elon talking about how much they thought Biden just hated fucking Kamala and was trying to get Trump to win. I'm like, they're probably right.
Did you see his face when they met at the White House?
Yeah,
Joe Biden
just
smiling
grinning.
like a kid in a candy shop. Joe Biden went to the polls dressed like a blood. I mean, come on, dude. She's in red head to toe. I mean, they totally wanted Donald Trump to win.
And I feel like those subliminal messages, like the dressing in red thing, I saw that on Twitter, and I'm so disconnected from the political landscape. I'm like, who gives a fuck if she's dressing in red? And then I feel like you said something. Well, yeah, if she's dressing in red. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. She probably did it on purpose.
I mean, you don't show up to the polls dressed completely into the color that represents your opponents when your husband just got stabbed in the back by his own team, and it doesn't mean anything. I mean, come on.
No, I tell you, I'm sure it did. I just think it's hilarious.
Now, I don't think that Joe Rogan changed the outcome of this election, but there is something to be said for Trump goes on, gets 100 million views in what I think is pretty widely accepted as a good performance. JD Vance goes on, widely accepted, good performance. Fetterman goes on for some reason. I don't know why they put him there to speak for the Democratic Party. And a lot of it's not his fault. They shouldn't have done that to him, but he did terribly. Yeah. He bombed.
Well, how many views did the Fetterman podcast get?
I have no idea, but if they got, no matter how many it got, it was because people were like, dude, go check out this fucker. They were not good views, man. And a lot of it was, okay, I'm going to say it's half and half. He clearly is still recovering from his stroke and not recovering very well. He cannot hear. But number two, he had no answer to the border question. Right. Joe Rogan pretty much asked him one real question the whole time. And that was, what are we going to do about the migrant crisis? And why did the Democratic Party allow this? And he had no answer for it.
See, I'm just curious on just for me, like my own personal, the Fetterman podcast, zero influence on how I was going to vote.
Sure.
I'm curious on if the average day person even know who Fetterman is.
It's a good point. And
bet it's very few.
That's why I'm saying Joe Rogan did not influence this election. The landslide it was.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like Rogan, whether it was Rogan hosting the podcast influencing the election, or just Trump going on the podcast, I bet it swung. There's no way 100 million people watched it and you didn't get, some swing voters in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I wish I had the stat up, but in the three blue wall states, 250,000 votes was all that decided this election. That's what I think the total was.
Jeez.
It's not that many.
No.
Compared to 100 million Joe Rogan views.
Right. Yeah, but so, I mean, you say you sway 50,000, 10,000 people, I mean, that's proportionally out of the votes that matter. That's quite a few.
Yeah, no, that's, man, I just don't think that if you watched the Donald Trump Joe Rogan interview, maybe it gave you more exposure. Maybe you weren't going to vote before and now you're going to vote for Trump. Right. But how many people went into that as a Kamala Harris voter and came out a Trump voter? I think it was a turnout play. You know, it was bringing people out that may just not have voted to vote for Trump.
Fuck.
And that's the name of the game.
Vote's a vote.
That's the name of the game. But I'm still standing on, I don't think he swung this election.
To me, the J.D. Vance episode, and I'm not sure what it did for views, but for me personally, the J.D. Vance episode had way more effect on who I was going to vote for than the Trump episode did.
It's a good point.
I really like J.D. Vance.
Well, they smeared him as a nincompoop, as a moron, as an extremist. Yeah. And then you go watch his podcast interviews, and he's just kind of like a normal guy, man.
And I will say, I pretty much knew nothing about this guy other than my mother-in-law read his book, watched his movie, really liked him. Other than that, I pretty much knew nothing. Listening to the podcast, and I'm like, I would vote for this guy over Trump fucking 10 out of 10 times. I mean, no doubt.
And I heard some former Obama advisors say this, and it's completely true, which kind of leads me into my next question for you, is they said that Donald Trump going on Joe Rogan helped him. They didn't think it swung the election, but it helped him. J.D. Vance, it helped them. But they didn't feel that they had a candidate or even a representative to go on and fill in for Kamala Harris that could do a 3-hour interview.
Yeah.
Not one person.
Which is, I mean,
that's nuts.
I'm so disconnected from the political landscape. I don't really know who, like, you got Nancy Pelosi.
Newsom.
I mean, yeah, I guess Newsom. Yeah.
It's just,
and, but I don't know. I mean, is Newsom a representative of Kamala's campaign? I guess. I mean, maybe if he was the vice president, candidate.
Just somebody to fill in. I mean, you couldn't send Tim Walz in there. Yeah, I mean, no way in hell.
For sure.
That guy's a weirdo.
Yeah. And I feel like really for Kamala, and once again, Rogan Musk talked about this. It was kind of a boneheaded move to pick that guy. Was she pick him like when she was sleep deprived or something, or allegedly?
She couldn't pick the Jew.
Yeah.
Josh Shapiro.
Also, that was the first I'd heard of that, which is, to me, I'm so in our area. I feel like I'm so disconnected. Like, we're so disconnected from any Jewish hate. In our area, that's just not a thing.
Rural California, there are very few Jews, very few anti-Semites.
Yeah, I mean, that is just a whole different worldview for us. It's hard to relate to.
Yep.
But they're talking about, like, well, she could have picked Gavin Newsom, and I fucking hate Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
He's a scumbag. And he's a slime ball, and you could find so many examples of why this guy's a fucking slime ball, but he would have been a better candidate. Yep. And at least he's kind of a public figurehead. He's a politician, and he knows how to play the game,
Yep.
He knows how to play the game enough to get elected here.
Yep. But how?
Oh, is there? There's a cap on governor term limits, right?
Yeah, he's done in 2028.
He's up.
He's done. He's
2028.
That's why he's running for president in 2028.
So far away.
I know.
So far away.
No, it can't come soon enough. But this was going to lead me to my next question. Try and block out your hindsight. I know we've got the advantage of hindsight here, but it's the day after Joe Rogan's Trump podcast drops. you're the chairman of Kamala Harris's campaign. What do you tell her to do? You tell her to go on, go talk to Joe, or not?
I don't know. If I was him, I'd tell her no. And this is without me knowing Kamala. I think I know her well enough to know that would be a train wreck. I feel like it was a tough. What they should have done is not told Rogan they wouldn't go on because of certain stipulations.
Yep.
They should have just told
Good
them
point.
we're not going on, and it would have looked better. I feel like there wasn't enough, repercussions for not going on versus the train wreck of a 3-hour conversation with someone who's going to ask you real life questions.
Yep. The cost benefit was not there. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. I would not have put her on Joe Rogan either. But the last point that I brought up, that not only would I not put her on Joe Rogan, I can't think of a Democrat that I would put on Joe Rogan
Yeah.
to defend her. And that goes back to my whole assertion is that it didn't matter at all who the candidate was.
Right.
Nobody was going to win. Somebody, you could argue that maybe Newsom wouldn't have got blown out as badly, or, Josh Shapiro might not have gotten destroyed as bad, but nobody was going to win on the Democratic side.
No, I feel like winning, no. But having a better show of face, yeah. I mean, and I don't know, I guess I'd be interested to know how a person that maybe lives in a swing state or maybe just any other state views Gavin Newsom versus how I view him. I've seen the carnage firsthand.
Yep.
Where does a guy in Pennsylvania? I'm sure Pennsylvania probably. Ohio know who Gavin Newsom is? Probably. I don't know.
They don't know. They don't know what he did to San Francisco.
Right,
they don't live 3 hours from the absolute hellhole he
Yeah.
created out of one of the best cities
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah, I've said that for a few years now. Growing up, used to go to San Francisco pretty consistently, at least once a year, if not multiple times a year for, some nice weekend vacations. It used to be a really cool place to go to. Last time I went was actually when you got engaged.
Yep.
And what a fucking shithole.
What a shame. What he
Yeah.
did to that city is essentially unforgivable.
Yeah.
Him and Kamala Harris, actually.
Yeah.
They both were politicians in San Francisco.
It's tough for the Democratic Party, especially with, using California as an example, which, may be the ultimate Democratic state. I don't know if New York.
California is more liberal.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. For being if we're the figurehead of the Democratic Party as a state, what a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at these Republican areas, which I don't know what the land mass that we just voted for the last election is. 75% of the state, land mass wise, voted
California?
Republican. Yeah.
Oh, it's more Republican than it was last time. It's
Right.
essentially just the coastal
Right.
areas
Which-
now. I
what-
mean, it's
what's
probably
that?
90%
Yeah.
Republican.
So, it's just these just densely populated, areas that are just, the guys holding the Democratic thing down. And ironically, that's kind of now the places people don't want to go to.
yeah.
At least if you live in California. I'm sure you get the tourists that still want to go to LA. I think San Diego's still all right. But, like we're saying, the Bay Area, I mean, you can go to the Bay Area and fear for your life.
For sure. Second question here for you. Who is more responsible for the loss to Donald Trump? Kamala Harris or Joe Biden?
I would say Kamala Harris. I guess, because for me, mentally, I put what happened in the last 4 years, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden are side by side, equals, And is that how the power actually breaks down? Probably not. But, there was no Kamala shying away from Joe Biden during the last 4 years. You know, I mean, I feel like they were, publicly pretty united on everything they're doing, and I just get the vibe from Kamala that she's just a go with the flow kind of gal, and
She's a puppet.
yeah, and she's just gonna do let the people in the border, okay, send money to Ukraine, okay, whatever pays my bills.
I guess I blame Joe Biden a little more because I blame him for Kamala Harris being the nominee too. Like,
Yeah.
not only do I blame him for running the country into the ground, all the inflation, the wars, the Afghanistan pullout, we could go on and name them all. But the last real act he ever did was throw his weight behind Kamala Harris. And I've come out fully said he did that to sink the Democratic ticket on purpose.
Yeah.
Because he said, if I'm not going to win, no one's going to win. But that's
like,
still on him.
And like we said before, if Kamala Harris had started off her campaign by trying to separate herself from Joe Biden, even if it wasn't true, all she would have had to say is, I tried telling this motherfucker we should have done this, and he just wouldn't listen to me. And he's the boss. And then she kind of could have played he's a male and I'm a female, so he didn't respect the female opinion,
I didn't even think of that card for her to play. She could have done that. Just
and
said,
that probably would have went over pretty well.
No, she could have pulled all he did was mansplain to me everything I was supposed to do. That might have played with Democratic voters.
I
Who
bet
knows?
it would have, for sure.
Interesting. I'd never thought of that, but
I kind of just thought of it right now, and so that's her own fault, and I feel like it's her own fault in the sense of when they're kind of parading out Joe Biden was going to run again. I feel like if she actually thought she was going to be the presidential candidate at that point, she shouldn't have been like openly saying, "Oh yeah, he's good to go. Let's roll the dice."
Yeah. She still says that he's mentally fit enough to be president.
Right.
That's just a clear lie, and the media never pressed her on that.
So really, when's the last time when was Joe president? A year ago? 2 years ago?
There were reports he had Alzheimer's in 2019.
Yeah,
and he may have never really been in control. But Joe Biden, I just blame him so much for all the things he did to this country.
No, I get what you're saying.
He's probably the worst president, at least since Carter, maybe since Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah,
he is.
I don't know my presidential history well enough to make a judgment on when he's been the worst since.
Carter was very similar to Joe Biden, a one-term Democrat. It was the Iran-Contra the Iran hostage crisis that was under him. So foreign policy became a disaster.
Yeah.
There was inflation. There's actually a lot of comparisons between Carter's administration and Biden's.
And I think the other big thing for why I blame Kamala is she was running her campaign on talking about change. Like, you elect me, we're going to change this. You elect me, we're going to change that. Blah, 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 blah. And what probably would have got her some fucking votes is if she started doing it. Like, you know what? I'm going to be the nominee. I'm doing this tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm taking control.
Yeah.
People might have liked that. And
I feel like they wouldn't have not liked it if they could have visibly started seeing some change.
Yep. It's just all, I personally think it was all just a moot point. I think once Joe Biden they were going to lose even if Joe Biden ran, but it's hard to pin down the point that Donald Trump was 100% going to become the nominee, because I think, a lot of people say, well, it was the day he survived the assassination attempt.
But I think
it was long before that.
Trump is such a easy figure to hate that it could have gone the Democrats' way at any point, for the most part.
I think once he got shot, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself here. When he got shot in the head, I think that's when everyone knew it was over. At least that's when I thought that it was really done. I think he really won it a lot longer before. No Democrat was going to win with this inflation and all this.
I have a different opinion. I think it was kind of, well, I guess let me take this back. Was Kamala the nominee when Trump's assassination attempt happened?
No.
Yeah, I would say it happened much later as far as a real turning point,
Okay.
And that's just one man's opinion, To me, it seems like Trump is so polarizing. He's such a love-hate guy, You love him or you hate him. And there's not a whole lot in between. So I think there's a lot of people that really could have gone either way. And if the maybe the Democrats had just, if the Democrats had found the J.D. Vance of the Democratic Party, just someone completely disassociated with this regime. That's what they needed.
Yeah. Do you think that person might have had a chance to win?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I mean, they just, to me, for a presidential candidate, and one of the reasons I like J.D. Vance so much, off my brief, 3-hour podcast interview, listening to him, it's just he was so well spoken and he was not, I don't want to say strongly opinionated, but he was very articulate about what he was saying, and I feel like just he was very easy to listen to, and he didn't have Trump's, what do you call it?
The weave.
Yeah, well, the weave and
his divisiveness. How
yeah. I mean, just the when you love yourself.
the narcissism.
Yeah, the narcissism, man. I mean that's really what makes that. That's why I think the election up until maybe a couple weeks before the election was Trump's to or maybe the Democrats to lose to an extent, was just because Trump's so narcissistic that. I mean, that's why a lot of people hate him.
Yeah.
But, that's just, I feel like and I've said this for several elections now, if the Democrats just elected some normal fucking guy or nominated some normal guy, they'd probably win easily, But
I've got a counterpoint to the Trump hate. Now.
Yeah.
When Trump won in 2016, there were protests everywhere. When he was running in 2016, massive protests at all his rallies, shit like that.
Right.
2020, there were also a lot of protests, but it was also during COVID, so you had that tamped down. 2024, there were no real counter protests.
No.
His rallies, when he had that Madison Square Garden rally with 20,000 people, whatever it was, they said the counter protest was like 300 people.
Yeah.
There was just
I get what you're
no
saying,
wind
for
in the
sure.
sails
Yeah.
of the anti-Trump movement. And I've heard one theory on it, and that's that all of the anti-Trump people that would go to those protests had spent all summer protesting the war in Gaza.
Right.
And so they were just burnt out on,
Right.
8 months of protesting, and they didn't like Kamala Harris either, so they just didn't show up.
Right.
But I think really that there just wasn't the energy in the country behind opposing Donald Trump again.
Right.
I don't think it was there.
I think it's kind of one of those things when you're the incumbent and you're running for a re-election, you don't have the same juice that you did. I mean, Trump in 2020, same thing, I mean, you can't tell me Trump in 2020, his campaign was as strong as it was in 2016 or, this year. Because maybe he kind of took it for granted that he was going to win. Or I feel like if you're the incumbent, you're like, well, the incumbent wins 85% of the time. And
Yep. And now, so let's talk about, since we're talking about, fake opposition versus real opposition, do you think the polls were real, or do you think they're just rigged to begin with?
I guess, which polls are we talking about?
Well, so you had the Real Clear Politics polling average had this was supposed to be the closest election of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
I mean, every single poll was in the margin of error and all the swing states. And it turns out it was a landslide for Trump, well outside the margin of error. And the popular vote, nationally, well outside the margin of error. So are the pollsters just incompetent, or are they lying to us to try and get people to show up and vote for Democrats,
Or
making
both.
them think that they have a chance?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess my follow-up question may be, do you know anyone that's ever been polled in the history of ever?
I've been pulled for random little things like that. They don't call you and say like, "Hey, I'm Sean with Real Clear Politics." It's usually farmed out to some other small company or nonprofit or something. So I have been polled before, but it was
maybe the people that
2018 or
respond
something.
to the polls aren't at fucking work. So because I'll tell you when I get
That's a
texts,
good point.
I call them scam texts, but the polling text, text this about rent control or blah, 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 blah. Vote on Prop 33. And I'm always kind of look at it, middle of my day, busy as fuck. Don't give a shit. Swipe over, move on with my life.
Yeah. They just, you would think response bias, they'd have it figured out by now, but maybe they don't. Maybe
I could totally see, like, I feel like, I don't know. To me, mentally, in my head, this may or may not be correct. Republicans, typically working, blue collar. Liberals, not.
or at least, even if they are working, they're working at a job that they can step away and answer, a pollster or something.
A desk job.
I'm not saying a desk job.
Corporate farming office job.
I was more thinking academia. I was thinking a professor, a teacher, something.
A teacher.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But
I am on the train of all teachers work for the government and therefore are liberal.
We're gonna ignore that. We have at least 1,000 listeners that are teachers here, so we're not
half of them are Derek's relatives.
We're not gonna shame these people, but I am related to a lot of folks out here. What do you think about Elon Musk's effect and X? Does him opening up a free speech platform something that made a difference in this election?
Oh yeah, I would say so for sure. And I guess to our points, I hadn't really thought of that, talking about that yet. To our points of what changed the election, I would 100% say that did.
Yeah,
100%, because it's kind of like on X or Twitter. I like saying Twitter.
Go ahead.
I'm an OG.
Call it Twitter.
I'm an OG.
We're not out. Elon Musk isn't going to sue us. He loves us.
Yeah, Elon can talk to my 25,000 tweets.
Yeah, that's right.
Step his game up.
Yeah, Elon, and you tweet some great memes too. He'd probably love them. He'd probably love that shit.
But I think, at least on Twitter, it's like, call it biased if you want, but in my opinion, it really is unbiased because anyone can go on there and say anything.
Yep, I think it had an effect far outside of just Twitter, because once one of these platforms
it worked to keep Facebook honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once one of these platforms opened up and stood up to all the, I call them like the powers that be, but it's NGOs, it's activists, it's advertisers. Once one platform stands up and says no, the Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, all those fuckers. Once one company stands up and says no, go fuck yourself, just like what Elon said, then the other social media companies then have permission to stand up and go, oh yeah, we're in charge here, not you, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I'd give Facebook enough credit for doing that. Maybe they did. But in my opinion, it was like, if we don't ease up on this, people are just going to stop using it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I was. I mean, with all these people I know, or we know, getting fact checked on stuff that really shouldn't be fact checked.
Right. Right.
And I can't remember if I got fact checked. I feel like even I got fact checked on something. I was like, all right.
RFK Jr.'s that he just got fact checked on was horse shit. I don't know if you saw his Fruit Loops tweet. So he tweeted this. Hold on. Let me see if I can just pull this up.
But like Elon was saying to Joe, the whole community notes thing of Twitter, I feel like is kind of the real OG of fact checking. Because he's like, even I get community noted. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one's above the community notes.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So I'm trying to pull this up here.
But did you see RFK in pain eating McDicks after UFC?
I did see that. He looked like he was being held hostage. Okay.
How do you feel about RFK getting Trump to drink regular cola and not Diet Cola?
He said the food on there is disgusting. Listen to this. So RFK sends a tweet out about how the Fruit Loops in other countries.
Okay. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So he says the Fruit Loops in other countries have more natural dyes, whereas in the United States, we use too many chemicals in our Fruit Loops. Look at the ingredients list. In the United States, it's way too many ingredients. Here's the fact check here. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the US version. But he was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is added for freshness.
Yes.
What the fuck kind of a fact check is that?
And, you know, when we were talking about it with your dad the other night, and your dad is talking about how they want to do away with how, like, you know, we farm corn and whatnot. And I was kind of like, you know, I don't give a fuck about, like, yeah, farming corn is, I feel like, could it be improved? Probably. All things
no
can
more
be improved.
But
This is exactly what I'm talking about, you know. And when I really noticed it was when I went to Iceland, and you're looking at, like, wow, this Powerade looks different. And then you look at the ingredient list and you're like, wow, I know a lot more stuff on this list. Yeah. And, like, you know, when I was eating the food there and drinking the stuff there, I just felt better.
Yep.
And
that's common.
What me and my wife, we both noticed was after we eat a big meal, maybe a normal sized American meal, a healthy meal. Mm-hmm. We didn't get that, like, bloated drowsiness, you know. It's just like, I feel good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nope. I think you hear a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things we could improve, you know, getting chemicals and shit out of our food. I mean, good. Let's do it.
Why do we have them in there? Like, that's just like, this has been my Facebook stay-at-home mom kick. You know, I stopped buying shredded cheese in the store because they put sawdust in it. And I was like, I'll shred my own fucking cheese.
Jesus. Jeez. You know, another thing that gets people all fired up, great conspiracy theory here for everybody, the fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
Let's go with
turning
that.
the frogs gay.
It's it's making the frogs trannies, all sorts of shit. But, you know, my buddy, we were talking about it, and, you know, the justification is, it helps your teeth. And so I said, okay, well, you grew up in a city and you have drank water with fluoride in it your whole life. I grew up in the country on a well.
Right.
There's no fluoride in my water. You would think then that I would have a bunch of cavities and you wouldn't have any.
Right.
But that's not true. And for all the other people I know that grew up on well water, there's not just like some outbreak of cavities. Like, what? None of us drink fluorinated water. So if it makes that big of a difference, why do we not have a bunch of cavities? I feel
like, you know, I grew up on well water, still on well water. And I'm not going to say I've never had a cavity before, but a normal amount of cavities.
Yeah,
you know,
not outrageous,
kid,
right?
Know?
Like,
yeah.
How about all the people? Do you know of just like an outrageous amount of people around here with cavities?
Right,
like, I don't.
Yeah,
no way. So why? And get this, the chemicals they put in the water in big cities, they actually turn the water yellow, and they have to put dye in it to turn it clear again because people.
I will say, just going
disgusting.
over to Chico, drinking the water, the tap water there, I'm like, what the fuck? You know?
City water's fucking disgusting, and you shouldn't be drinking that.
You know where it's not disgusting? Iceland.
I bet it's
delicious.
I bet it's glacier water. I mean,
it is. It is.
I bet it's some of the purest water in the world. But I was gonna play a clip here for us before we wrap it up here, because I really wanted to give us a look at how, just so we can put the final nail in the coffin here, the media. Here we go.
And I think it's important to say that, you know, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Mm-hmm. Let's just be clear. Mm-hmm. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic flawlessly run campaign. She had Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. I mean, she had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swiftie to the Swifties. She had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true.
Can you believe she didn't fucking win? She had all the celebrities.
All the celebrities. All those fucking child perverts. Those motherfuckers.
Dude.
So that one gets me, is they're making a big point about celebrities. And, what Trump got was Elon. Yeah, he's a celebrity in his own sense, but he's a fucking genius, you know? Like, you cannot tell whether you hate Elon, love Elon, you have to acknowledge the fact that he's making a big difference in our world, and he's got to be one of the smartest, individuals of our, time, if not of all time.
Yeah, for sure. No, completely. But just, oh my God, this is how stupid these people are.
Queen Latifah endorsed her, and she never endorses anyone.
Could you imagine being on national television and holding that up as a reason that your candidate should have won? Because Queen Latifah.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, the name sounds. If you gave me a lineup of 4 people and Queen Latifah was one of them, I couldn't pick her out.
I bet you could. If the other 3 were like.
I understand where you're coming from.
But so that's Joy Reid, and that's on election night on MSNBC.
That's too bad, because I thought you were going to say The View.
No. That's Joy Reid from even The View has a bar. You have to hurdle this level of intelligence.
The View host have to fact check herself on the show today.
Yeah, I did. Sunny hosting, and I think she was talking about Matt Gaetz, right? Yeah. So she, to give you guys a little bit of background, she was pretty much casting aspersions on Matt Gaetz, talking about how he's like a child predator, and then had to come on and give a legal note that he'd been investigated for child sex trafficking and was found to have not committed any crimes by the Department of Justice.
Not only that, she had to come on like 3 minutes later and do it. And she looked fucking pissed while she was doing it. Like,
she looked like she was delivering a ransom video. Yeah. It was bad. But Joy Reid, this lady, and we pick on her a lot on this podcast because she's an idiot. But I hope that when MSNBC finally goes bankrupt, that they hold this up as like the number one. Like, you guys put this person on national television to give their political opinion as some kind of expert, and she points to Queen Latifah and the Swifties as to why she can't believe called Kamala Harris's campaign flawless. What kind of retard thinks that Kamala Harris ran a flawless campaign? She couldn't. Her worst answer she gave from the entire campaign was on The View. Yeah. And it was the most obvious question you could imagine. What are you going to do different than Joe Biden? And she starts spinning about a middle-class family and shit. I mean, Joy Reid is the lowest IQ person on television, and they keep putting her on over and over again. And when their network crashes and burns, they're going to fucking deserve it. And it's because of her and everyone that's stupid like her.
Demise.
Yeah, she is the poster child of their demise. She's an idiot.
What kind of cracks me up is I feel like these people like hype them, like, everyone gives Trump a hard time about surrounding himself with yes men. Mm-hmm. But, I feel like some of these liberally led parties and companies are like, once again, accuse Trump of doing it, do it ourselves. Like, where's the self accountability,
if you were running a network like this and you're just like, all right, I've got an hour, I've got to put somebody on. I've got 330 million people in this country. And maybe we could even go out. We could get somebody from Canada or Britain. So you could even expand it out. Who am I going to pick? Who is the best person for the job? And then Joy Reid walks in and says the most stupid shit you could imagine. You're just like, that's
my
her.
Man.
That's her. Well, she's going to save this network.
Much like, the last several U.S. press secretaries. Is there really no one better you could find to do this job?
Well, there probably is, but they don't meet the DEI requirements, so you can't hire them.
Gotta check the boxes.
Yep, you can't. You got to look a certain way to be on a lot of these panels, and Joy Reid checks those boxes.
Not at Boeing anymore.
I hope not, man.
No.
I hope not.
They got rid of that department.
Go.
Too many airplanes falling apart.
Well, I want the best for Boeing because I end up on Boeing planes every once in a while, and I would really like them to not
I
fall
end
out
up
of the
on
sky.
a lot of Boeing planes pretty consistently. A lot of 737s, a lot of 737 Maxes.
Yeah, a lot of 737 Maxes for me. I'm going flying budget on Southwest, baby. But just to wrap this up, man, for Joy Reid and MSNBC, when they look, I really sincerely hope that when cable news finally peters out and they're essentially dead. They have no more power. They lied this entire election. Didn't make a single difference. When the next election comes in 2028, nobody is going to be doing interviews on cable news. It's all going to be podcasts. And I hope when they're out of a job and they go home and they look in the mirror and they ask, why did cable news fail?
Yeah.
I hope they look at themselves and some of these old clips and go, oh yeah, I'm why they failed.
That's why.
Because I'm an idiot. That's why.
I guess that just depends on how many millions of dollars you made off the burning ship.
Yep. And then you know what? I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna. Oh, I don't have that post up for MSNBC, but I was gonna read that post about how MSNBC. My buddy had just sent this to me about how. And this was sent. This was in 2024, but early 2024 about how. Joe Biden not actually running on the Democratic ticket was some right-wing conspiracy. And that, the article even calls out right-wing conspiracy theorists say that party insiders are going to push out Joe Biden. Of course, that's exactly what happened. Like every other conspiracy theory that's come true.
I was going to say, by the legacy, that's, a big reason why, faith is being lost in the legacy media, why they're losing views, is all these right-wing fucking mega conspiracies keep coming out and they get ridiculed and then they're correct 6 months later or 3 months later, whatever,
Yep. But that's the way she rolls.
Yeah.
Cable news, it's dead.
It's your ship. I guess ride it till it sinks.
Yep. You got anything else you want to say on cable news before we declare them powerless?
R.I.P. You never had power over me.
Rip, bitch. We're glad you're gone. Fuck you. Sincerely, the boys.
The boys.